Why hello there, and welcome back to Tabletop Ferox, the internet's #1 show called Tabletop Ferox. In the last episode, where I reviewed 2 Change, I suggested that perhaps in a future episode I would talk about the solo play rules for that game, or, perhaps another game based on those solo rules. A thing that at least one person picked up on what I was implying. Anyway, it is now a future episode, and I am doing that thing that I said I would in the previous episode, as it is now aforementioned future episode, where I'm doing that thing. I am really good at intros. Like, not to brag, I think I might be the best at intros. Slugfest was released in 2023 and is a solo journaling game about sexily turning into a slug, and then perhaps fucking as a slug. Listen, I never said that I didn't cover weird shit. I believe I very explicitly state on a regular basis that I do cover weird shit. And this is something that really caught my attention because just, in general, I'm a really big fan of both slugs and fucking. Like, I wrote a slug-based webcomic for 2 years, and may or may not be involved in various fucking-related artistic endeavors. It's a fun little thing I do where I like to be really cryptic about that. Like, am I joking? Am I serious? Who knows? Anyway, as implied earlier, Slugfest is based on the solo rules for 2 Change, and just for the sake of being thorough, I'm going to go over those solo play rules before I even get into all of the slugginess. Like the core rules, the 2 Change solo rules use the 22 cards of the Major Arcana. And, of course, guide you through a transformation experience, because that's what the whole game is about in general. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what kind of transformation you're going to be dealing with. And you can select one from the book, or just make up one yourself, with or without the help of the random tables that are provided for that specific purpose. Or, just make it up as you go along, or use the included HTML change database, which can randomly select one of 58 different transformation sequences. Point is, you have options. Like anything else in this game, there are a lot of options available to you. Then we need to choose or draw a starting card, and just to help me explain this, let's pull one up. So let's say that our starting card is the Star. Each starting card provides a starting prompt. In this case, the cutting edge of science and technology offer many avenues of change, experimental procedures and unstable injections. These fruits of futuristic research churn within you. Each failure is a minor setback to your development, merely laying the groundwork for potential improvements. Each card also sets a starting number of changes, in this case 0 to 1, and a special rule. In this case, every day you draw a reversed event, you can remove a change or add a change in any attribute. And then with that settled, you write a journal entry chronicling the beginnings of your transformation, and then write another journal entry for each successive day, taking another change and drawing another card to determine an event. Each card having 4 possible events, 2 sets of upright and reversed results, which are generally positive and negative respectively, and based on your current number of changes. So for example, the Star card has 2 different sets of upright and reversed results, one for 3 or fewer changes, and one for more than 3 changes. And then, of course, as you journal your way through the story, you can use the mechanics from the base game to determine the outcomes of events if so desired, with certain events actually having additional effects on the mechanics. And then you just continue drawing cards, checking prompts, and writing a journaling response until you reach the permanence point. Or, you can just keep going after that. There is no hard endpoint to the solo rules. And that is basically the solo rules for 2 Change. And now on to Slugfest, which, as stated, is based on those solo rules, so they are very similar to what I've already discussed, with a few minor tweaks. Since Slugfest is specifically a game about turning into a slug, and more specifically, your relationship with another person while you are turning into a slug, there is only one option for transformation. But because it is so highly focused, it can dive much more deeply into that specific transformation and the specific type of story that it is designed to provide. And just for the most convenient way to explain the rest of the changes, let's once again pull up the star card. And yeah, sorry, I had to err on the side of caution here and family-friendly up the art a little bit, but as usual, you can find the uncensored version of this video on my Patreon. In place of the one starting prompt from 2Change, each card has a cause, which is the specific thing that is causing you to turn into a slug, and a partner, who is the person with whom you are going through this experience, and maybe having slimy sexy time. For example, with the star, your cause is volunteering to be a subject for science experiments, and the partner is a scientist or researcher. There is only one event for each card, but there is also a reaction, which is how your partner reacts to that day's change. So, compared to the base rules, there are a few fewer options, but you get 2 elements for each prompt, in addition to the transformation. And then each card also has an extra transformation, which can be triggered by certain events or by drawing the death card. And that is about it for the differences. The only other real major difference is in the endgame, whereas 2Change's solo mode doesn't really have a strong endpoint. Slugfest is specifically intended to be played through the entire transformation. So a game of Slugfest is intended to be 12 journal entries, one for each of the 12 changes. And obviously, if you wanted to, you could also incorporate the core 2Change rules into your Slugfest experience, but that is not a core part of the game. And, technically you could add any core mechanics to the game if you really wanted to, just because of how these games work. But yeah, basically, that is Slugfest. Overall, a concept that I find very interesting. As much as 2Change was weirdly specific and general at the same time, Slugfest is just hyper-specific. And I really like games that are designed to provide a specific experience and then do not deviate from that. Essentially focusing on doing one thing very well instead of a bunch of things okay. And overall, I think that they executed that specific thing fairly well. The 2Change solo rules are something of an ambitious thing to base a game on, since everything you want to add, you have to add 22 times. 22 causes, 22 partners, 22 events and reactions. It is the sort of thing where even the minimum amount of content is still quite a lot, and they went a bit over that minimum, adding new elements to the game, which, as stated, had to be applied for every single card. And then the transformations themselves are also very thorough, each one being multiple paragraphs long or having multiple different options, including an entire set of alternate options for one of the changes if you would rather be a snail instead of a slug. So just like 2Change provides a lot of options for telling a transformation story, Slugfest provides a lot of options for telling a very specific transformation story. And that's another thing. Making a good sexually themed game is more than a little tricky. Just because of the way tabletop role-playing games work, there is nothing stopping you from making any game sexual. Like, there are no rules for fucking in Dungeons & Dragons, but you very much can fuck in Dungeons & Dragons. Even if you don't have the Book of Erotic Fantasy, which obviously I do. And I think Slugfest does a really good job of using what it provides to steer you in that direction without ever forcing you into a sexual situation. Like, yeah, some of the content gets fairly explicit, but it is more so in the sense of creating situations that can turn sexual, or describing the new ways that your changing body can be used sexually. Although, personally, I disagree with their interpretation of what you can, and more importantly, should do with a radula. So if you really wanted to, you could play this game focused entirely on a romantic or even platonic relationship. Like, yeah, the sexual themes of the game are undeniable and overt, but the core experience is just about turning into a slug and how that affects your relationship with another person. And I think that is the big test for a well-designed game based around sexuality, that you can play it without having sex. Like, sex can be the premise and everything can steer you towards sex, but you should be able to just not have sex if you don't feel like it, without having to essentially quit out of the game to do so. And also, I do like some of the silly little details that they added, like renaming some of the cards to things like the High Slugstress, Snail of Fortune, and Slug World, which, incidentally, is the name of that slug-themed webcomic that I did for a while. And it looks okay. Very much a pluses and minuses situation here. A lot of art is provided to illustrate the changes that you are going through, including all of the multiple options that you can choose from. Which is a good thing that I always like to see. I like to see illustrations of the things so that I know what the things look like. However, while I do like the actual art, these big graphic frames dominate a lot of the page. Like, if they were each used once, I would love them. I think that looks great. But having one on almost every single page really starts to feel like it's suffocating the text. And speaking of the text, this is just not a good body text typeface. Like, when you're laying out a game, readability should always be your #1 concern. So yeah, Slugfest. Overall, a pretty good, sexy slug transformation journaling game. But like 2 Change, your enjoyment of it is going to be based largely on wanting the very specific experience that it is designed to provide. If you are not at least open to the idea of exploring the experience of being changed into a slug and how those physical and mental changes affect how you experience your sexuality, you are not going to like this game, because that is the experience that this game provides. However, if you are open to that, then this game provides a lot of interesting options for exploring that experience. And also, if you happen to like esoteric erotic journaling games, I happen to have written one about fucking ghosts. So if this is your kind of thing, then you should also check out Penetrating the Veil, which, in my admittedly biased opinion, is pretty awesome. And thank you for watching. If you enjoy my content, you can follow me on the social media. There are links in the description. And extra special thanks to my Fightin' Flail Snails, Broken Unicorn, Omar Parker, Randy Mulholland, and Toshiro Kuro. If you'd like to be cool like them, check out my Patreon. But if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, or these other lovely videos that the dark, unseen hand of the YouTube algorithm has lovingly selected for you. And I will see you next time.